Hi, welcome to another edition of On the Spot with My Astro Chris, and I'm Chris Taylor, your astrologer with My Astro Chris. And today we have another brave soul willing to put themselves on the spot, and I'm going to give you a little bit of tidbits on her chart, just a few things going on in terms of her birth chart, as well as what's going on now in her current life. So what I'll do first, I'm going to hopefully be able to throw up a copy of this chart that will sync in with the video after I'm done here. But if not, we're at least going to look at the chart manually. So there's a brief look at her chart. And if you're not familiar with astrology at all, this circle here, circular image here, that horizontal line across the middle, that sort of main horizontal line there, that bold line, that's the horizon line. Planets below the horizon were below the horizon when she was born, and planets above the horizon were above the horizon when she was born. So in other words, the sun, indicated by that symbol there, that circle within a circle, was just below the horizon. She was born just before sunrise. If you were to look up into the night sky, you would have saw, for example, the moon up here, pretty close to the top of the sky at that time that she was born. It's just to give us a slight orientation. Now, what I want to discuss about this chart a little bit for this person is, number one, just a few basic pointers, and then, like I say, we'll talk about exactly what's going on now and what she can look forward to in the next, in the near future, I guess. And so the first thing I really look at when I look at a chart is just the general nature of how the planets are actually dispersed amongst that ring there, that circle that we just showed. And what I'm looking for is kind of where the planets are in terms of being more on top, more below, more to the right, more to the left. And the way this is dispersed, you can see it pretty clearly, that most of the planets are above the horizon line. That's pretty clear. And then also most of the planets are to the left of the horizon line. And so what that indicates to me is this is a person that has a keen awareness of what the outside expects of her. In other words, she's very aware of what the rules are, what the laws are, what the ethics are by which people go about their days, go about their lives. She's very aware of it. But at the same time, she's someone who's independent in her own actions. And so this can right away cause some strife in that, being very aware of what the laws are and what the rules are, and being very independent, wanting to do things your own way, there's going to be, an awareness of what you're supposed to do, and then oftentimes, going against those rules purposely, or as just a way to prove that she's someone that can live by her own accord in some way. And so that's just a generality. We don't want to get too deep into that, but just kind of sets up the umbrella under which we'll get more specific. Another thing I look at is just the general elemental and quality dispersion of these of the planets and the signs and everything. And so the elements are fire, air, earth, and water, and the qualities being cardinal, fixed, and mutable. All the 12 signs of the zodiac have they have one element and one quality. So there's one fire cardinal sign, for example. There's one earth mutable sign, as another example. And so I just want to see what her predominant energy makeups are. And when we do this, actually what we find in this chart is that in general it's relatively balanced. There's a little higher propensity for earth over the other elements, the air, water, and fire energies, but she's not really lacking these energies in any way. So she does have a mix of all the energies with a slight propensity towards earth energy. In terms of the qualities, she's almost a dead even in terms of balance. She has just about the same amount of mutability, cardinal, and fixed qualities. And so cardinal quality, if we were to look at a project, for example, cardinal energy is what you need to get the project started. Fixed energy is energy you need to get projects that are already started to their finish point and to make sure everything's done. And mutable energy is the ability to adjust and change along the way. So she's very relatively balanced in that kind of sense, but again, a slight propensity towards earth and the elements. So we can't really glean too much from that because there's so much balance there. We don't really see too much of a theme being pulled in either direction. in that case. The next thing that I look at with a chart is kind of what is leading this chart. And the first thing we look at would be on the left-hand side where that horizon line starts. What this is known as is the ascendant. And what we have here is the sign of Sagittarius on the ascendant. And so this sign that's rising at the time she was born is her rising sign. You might be familiar with that term. And so Sagittarius rising, what this tells us is this is the mask that she wears. This is how she would come across to people when they first meet her. How she thinks she's supposed to be. How she perceives that she needs to be in order to be accepted by people. So somewhere along the line, this person decided or perceived within herself that being open-minded, being freedom-loving, very gregarious, easygoing, these are just descriptors of Sagittarian energy. Also, someone who is willing to be first, willing to go first without thinking, very fiery. And so whether or not these qualities actually are a good description of her on the inside, this is how she comes across on the outside. This is how people would initially assess her. And so with that Sagittarian energy, if people were to describe her after just meeting her, that's what they would say. They would say she's gregarious and open-minded and easygoing, etc. The next thing to look at, though, this is kind of the first layer, that layer that we protect ourselves with, that wall, that mask. If people are to penetrate that wall, they actually know us a little bit more and see us when we're vulnerable and in states when we're not all that together, that's when our moon energy comes into play. And so in this chart, you see the moon up here. It's in Virgo, about 23 degrees Virgo in the 9th house. I have my moon actually at 23 degrees Virgo. So I'm pretty familiar with how this operates. So like I said, the moon energy is that it's the next layer that you get to when you get to know someone. And so while she's coming across with this sort of Sagittarian, fiery, kind of open-minded kind of energy, when she's stressed or under duress in some way, and she's unconsciously reacting to something, she'll tend to fall into this Virgo-like energy. And Virgo energy is very, very different from Sagittarian energy. Where Sagittarian energy is very big picture and open. Virgo is very small picture and closed. Virgo is it's an energy that's very obsessed with order, practicality. These are things that Sagittarius energy has nothing to do with. So the point is, when you first meet her, or when someone first meets her, she may present herself as someone very open-minded and fun-loving, etc. But a time of stress may hit, and she may fall into, when she's unaware of it, into a state of mind where she's worried about order and getting obsessed with details. And so an example of this could be, approaching a new trip. Like, oh, I can't wait to go on this vacation, and presenting herself as being open to it and happy-go-lucky, and then the plane gets delayed or something, and she falls into an unconscious reaction of, well, how are we going to make it there on time? The Virgo is very much about how do things fit, how is it going to work, how is it going to make sense, and so she could fit in, all of a sudden fall into a more closed off and maybe even obsessive compulsive when it comes to the details and how things are going to happen, and a slight tendency toward negative thinking in some way. And like I said, I can relate to that. I tend to fall back into that kind of mode, but when you're aware of this kind of unconscious tendency, it's the best way to get on top of it and to understand that you don't need to go there. You don't really need to go there. It's just a sense that you feel like you need to go there. And she'd feel like she needs order. She needs things to make sense in order to feel comfortable. The reality is she doesn't. But it takes getting through that layer for her to understand that she doesn't have to worry about those details.